Hi, I'm Farrar, the host, for lack of a better term, of podcast number 1 of NuWho Review.
Hi, I'm Lewis, and I am a longtime Whovian co-producer of the Time Fest local time travel festival and owner of a very long scarf.
So am I, actually.
Really?
I have the really long scarf.
Okay.
I think you have scarf version 1 and I have scarf version 2.
It's not a prerequisite, but you know, you can pick a old school Whovian out in the crowd.
Well, this is the first of a series of podcasts, and of course, it coincides with the start of season 8 of NuWho, NuWho, and I saw it last night. I think you saw it the night before.
Yeah, I was actually very happy to see it in the theater, and I have to confess that was the second time I'd seen it. I was one of those naughty people who actually did get a hold of the bootleg pre-production of the episode without any special effects, sound effects, music, or color, and...
Speaking of that, well, I mean, we might as well start at the beginning.
Okay.
And we'll get
1963.
We'll get to overall impressions
Potter's
later.
Lane.
No, actually, there was no date stamp on the top of the episode, was there? So all we know is it's Victorian
when it was supposed
London.
to be set.
Yeah.
24 December 1893 was when they went up against the Great Intelligence.
Okay.
On what was that, 2 Christmas episodes ago?
Yeah. So we're in the late 1890s.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting that the T-Rex in the Thames drew such a small crowd. I expected
Barnum was probably in town, and
I expected to see CGI Houses of Parliament and all that stuff, because why not? But what I was amazed was that they didn't CGI any people like hanging out the windows or up on the roof trying to get a better view.
Yeah, or I don't know, the army.
They had one detective inspector, right?
Right.
And maybe a couple of constables.
Right.
For crowd control.
Yeah.
The only thing missing from this would be like a Monty Python-esque intro to it, where somebody's sitting down reading the paper, having a cup of tea, and somebody comes bursting in the door and says, "Oh, Gordon, you got to go out to the Thames. There's a big bloody lizard out there." And the reaction to that is, "Oh no, darling, it's Thursday. I go to shops on Thursday to pick up my bread and cheese. Can't do it, darling." Because how very British. Oh, there's a dinosaur. Yeah, okay, whatever. I got work to do.
I thought they were jaded now, but apparently they were more jaded back in the late 19th century.
Especially when Madame Vastra takes off her veil right there in the middle of the crowd, and then a couple of scenes later says, "I wear the veil for protection." Oh, wait, what? You wear the veil? Why? Because you don't want people to judge you? But you were just in a throng of people. Well, they were all distracted by the dinosaur.
The cover, right? They were all looking away. But I mean, the cover story has always been she's horribly disfigured, right? She and Strax are just, I guess John Merrick Part 3 and 4 or something, and
right.
Yeah, so...
the Elephant Man and the Lizard Lady.
Right. Right. Yeah, I have a real good feeling that we're going to be seeing a lot more of those people once they spin them off.
And they are going to spin them off?
It's not been announced, but it's definitely crying out for it.
I'm actually hoping that if they do spin them off, we're going to see less of them.
Well, it's probably the case. It's going to be like Torchwood.
It just seems like another MacGuffin that won't go away.
Right.
It's like, they started out as peripheral characters in an episode, and then somebody said, "Oh, that's interesting. Let's bring them back." And so they did. And since then, we've learned what about them?
Very little, other than Jenny and Vastra being married.
Right.
And
which is perfectly okay in the 1890s.
Yeah, nobody bats an eye.
In a dom-sub relationship, because she's her maid.
Well, I mean, it's not like anybody would notice that except for Strax, and he's so blitheringly...
Well, he's blind to things like sexual, he doesn't know boys from girls anyway, so...
Oh, good God. You really missed something. His report on regenerations in front of the theater showing of the episode was priceless.
Oh.
It was really, really funny. I love Strax to death, but I really hope that somebody redeems the whole glory of the Suntaran Empire at some point, because he's done more to trash the glory of the Suntaran Empire than any character in the entire canon.
Well, maybe that's why all of the Suntarans and even the Rutans are staying away from him,
Yeah, well, speaking of which, I mean, now that it's the year 2014, we could probably get away with a decent-looking Rutan. I think we're long overdue for a Rutan episode, aren't we? I mean, that That'd be really cool.
Well, considering all the things that they brought back in this episode, I was trying to enjoy the episode for what it was, but I kept going, call back.
Oh, it was so obvious. It was bloody obvious.
And I thought, is this Stephen Moffat's last episode? Because if it were my last written episode, I would go, I'm going to bring back all the things that everybody loves about my previous episodes.
Yeah.
And it seems like what he was doing. But, I mean, he's the showrunner, so he's going to write as many episodes as he wants.
I need to look this up, but I believe he is down for 5 episodes this series.
It was interesting to me because every time the doctor said, this is familiar to me, I went, yeah, it's familiar to all of us, too.
Yeah.
And every time they drill, how many times did they had to drill everything into our heads? I love the thing with Clara having the flashback, and then 30 seconds later, we had a snippet of the same flashback. We'll do it then. She just said that.
Yeah.
We remember.
I wish he would give the audience more credit, but it is a kid's show, you know. Sorry, family show.
Is it a kid's show?
Family show.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff that Mom and Dad are going to have to explain to the kids. What did the sonic screwdriver hit, Mommy?
Okay, let's see.
When it was off screen and she threw it in his lap and he got very hurt.
Sorry.
Can we talk about the incredibly long scene between Clara and Vastra that had very little point, apart from telling the audience again that they're not in a relationship?
You know, I think Moffat is reflecting way too much of the audience onto Clara's character. It's almost like some kind of an apology. You know, I'm very sorry that you think the Doctor is cute, but he's no longer cute, and so you're going to have to lump it.
I laughed out loud when she stood up and said, "How dare you?"
Uh-huh.
And I laughed out loud again when the maid started clapping and going, "Woohoo!" I was just like, don't tell me as a member of the audience, don't tell me that I liked that speech. I'm going to back up because I was going to say, how many times do we have to be told that the Doctor's not flirting? But then again, he does kind of go back and forth because he starts calling the dinosaur a big sexy lady.
You're right.
And then he goes back and he says, I'm not flirting. So maybe there is a little bit of, he does one thing and then he does the other because he just regenerated and he's still kind of...
I was about to say, you know, he was awfully unstable for
so
about
was
half
Clara.
the episode.
There was that weird thing at the very end where she says, I don't know who he is anymore. And then we hear the TARDIS sound. And she just goes running off to the guy who she doesn't know who he is anymore, but she's going to run off with him anyway.
Well, mind you, though, that's her only way out of the Sentry.
That's true, but she had the big smile on her face.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you asked the writer, he probably would say, oh, in her mind, she's got questions, but in her heart, you know, she's a companion, so...
Yeah, and she obviously does have different opinions all jostling for priority in her head.
Here's one thing I'd like to know. If she was woven into all the Doctor's timeline...
Why does she not know who he is now?
Not only that, I've never quite gotten the sense out of whether her current persona is even conscious of her entire life before that.
I assume
it doesn't make any sense.
I assume that it's not.
I guess not.
Because whenever we've seen her in other episodes where he mentioned that he had seen her in another time with another name, slightly different name, her reaction was always, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so, you know, maybe I'm just kind of imprinting it with, what it's ripped off of, which is Scaroth from City of Death.
Right.
You know, the idea is ripped off from Tom Baker's classic episode, City of Death, where you've got a character, in this case a villain, who's scattered throughout time. Every single facet of him is a different person in a different time, and they're all living their lives separately. Right. But they're connected. They are mentally connected. They can communicate with each other.
That's true, but Clara is unable to...
Because she's a MacGuffin.
Right. Clara MacGuffin Oswin.
Poor dear.
Yeah, she was an idea whose time had passed.
Well, then they had to retrofit a character onto her. She was a gimmick at first, and then they had to actually give her a personality.
There's a lot of stuff that's TBR, that is to be retconned in the next season, and I think one of them is Clara, because obviously they want to keep her.
Well, yeah, they made that decision on...
She's the eye candy of the show now.
Yeah, they made that decision in Time of the Doctor, didn't they? And I mean,
they had an opportunity
They had an opportunity. They could have jettisoned her there, but they couldn't, because they always have a companion along to bridge us over to the next Doctor.
Right.
They always do that. And then they get rid of that companion a season later, and so...
And remember, he always regenerates in front of his companions because he trusts them.
Right. Now,
that was
which has just been retconned.
That was a really weird thing. He's like, he regenerated. You were there. He trusts you. I'm like, of course he trusts her. He let her into the TARDIS for a start. The only person that's ever been let into the TARDIS that he didn't trust was there against his will. You know, Cyberman, the meddling monk, Turlo.
Yeah.
But now I'm really going back. But I thought that was, no, wait. The only time he didn't regenerate in front of his companions, I guess, was the regeneration from Troughton into Pertwee, because
that was right on
the Time Lords had taken his
right.
companions away. Mm-hmm. So that was not his choice. But every other time, the companions have been there.
Sorry, I'm going to have to relieve you of your pet. Your what? Shut up, I was talking to the horse.
Doctor Who is getting very steampunk, isn't it?
Well, if they stick around in the
they've got all
19th century, they've
got all the gears in the opening credits now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all clockwork. Now, I actually like that because in addition to the spacey, stars going, around in clouds like a nebula, we also have the clock face and the gears turning. So that reminds us of two things. One, that he's an alien and travels through space, and also that he travels through time.
I really have to hand it to them for actually taking a fan-made intro to the show and adapting it.
Is that where it came from?
Yes. That was fan-made by somebody who really is a professional and should be probably employed, and probably will be employed a lot more now. But he made that in his flat, and he got the call up by the BBC to adapt it. And so it's not that different.
Maybe I should perform some at-home script editor duties and see if the BBC will hire me to clean up their dialogue. Because, oh my God, the dialogue.
Yeah.
I guess because Peter Capaldi is an older actor and could very easily carry off with his looks a more stern kind of, I occasionally look down my nose at the humans, like Pertwee did, like Baker occasionally did, and like Eccleston certainly did, at least in the early episodes. I thought this would be the kind of guy who, like in the middle of a conversation when the Silurian, for some strange reason, although she was contemporary with them, doesn't speak dinosaur language, and neither do any of the humans, that would be a perfect opportunity for the Doctor to say, "What, you don't?"
Yeah.
Of course I do. You really should learn to speak,
Yeah.
You really should culture yourself. Reptiles are remarkably intelligent creatures, rather like yourselves. Instead of, I speak dinosaur.
Right, they could have had a Pertwee callback by just quoting Pertwee.
Right.
But that would have been too subtle, so...
Yeah. Well, instead we had the really obvious callbacks.
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, we're really picking this apart, but...
Oh, I enjoyed it, though.
When it comes down to it, I did enjoy it.
I think it's got a lot of promise.
Mostly because of Capaldi's great performance. I think he's got a lot of promise, and he's going to be a great Doctor. And, when it comes down to it, it wasn't really as bad as most regeneration episodes.
No.
There's been a lot of really bad first episodes. Probably the worst one is still a toss-up between Time and the Ronnie and Twin Dilemma, Colin Baker's first. I mean, neither one of them is watchable. They're both horrible. So
they were both really good ideas that fell apart.
I guess, yeah.
It fell apart like within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
No, I thought this was pretty good. And, as I said, Clara is a MacGuffin who essentially outlived her usefulness.
Hey, she's going to be with us for at least this entire season up until Christmas.
They gave her lots to do.
Yeah.
And they have given her a little more emotional depth in this episode than I saw in a lot of previous episodes. She's not a scream machine in this episode.
No, she's got to. She's got to undergo a character transformation because now her primary reason to pine after the Doctor is gone, and what she got left after that, just looking cool in different outfits? No, right. She's going to have to get a little bit more fleshed out, and I think probably she and Capaldi will hit a stride, and there'll be a really wonderful pair-up, the same way that perhaps that Liz Sladen became to Tom Baker, where she had already had a really great match with Pertwee.
Oh, yeah. Great chemistry.
They had great chemistry, but she and Tom Baker took it to another level.
Right. That was in part due to the fact that her character was so clever.
Yeah.
And Clara's character, she's a very clever character. She was figuring stuff out, and she did some of that in this episode as well. The only problem was they telegraphed it to the audience a little too, like, I knew what she was figuring out.
Yeah.
That's the thing, when you call it a family show or a kids show, kids don't mind being surprised any more than they mind being scared.
Yeah.
It's just another hill on the emotional roller coaster.
Different writers, are going to approach it with more or less subtlety.
I really like Good Companions. I think it's great to be right in the middle between Most Important Woman in the Universe and Scream Machine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of material in there. That's a
actually,
you can play with that a lot.
Well, what I really like is strong, resourceful people as companions that are out of their depth, and they realize they're out of their depth, and they blunder through it anyway and learn something. They learn a lot about how the universe works, and they become useful to the Doctor. He doesn't really need to have them around. In this case, we might be possibly looking at somebody who has to rein in the Doctor if he's been given this sort of fake third dimension of questioning his own morality. I think that's the theme that we're about to see trotted out throughout the entire season.
Where am I?
But where do you think you are? Look around you. You've made it. The promised land. Paradise.
With the final villain in this season, I don't want to call it and say, well, that's definitely the Ronnie, but if it were the Ronnie, the most amoral Time Lord that we've ever seen in the Doctor Who canon, well, maybe not most, but she's right up there with Omega as far as being really ruthless and very amoral, and, you're going to need some toughness to fight a character like that.
And I wonder if her reappearance has anything to do with the watch that he sold.
Ah, yeah.
Because I just happened to notice, she says, oh, you traded that watch for that coat? It was a beautiful watch. And I went, uh-oh, Time Lord.
And they've also apparently cast somebody else to play an older version of the Master. And I don't think they're going to be flipping genders, with Time Lords, at least not
yet anyway.
Yet.
Actually, what I was hoping for during the Matt Smith, I'm so clever, I'm so sexy, humans love me for my body era, was I was really hoping for him to get a lesbian companion. For him to start flirting with the girl, and she just looks at it and says, "You don't get it, do you?"
That would be cool.
Because it would be really interesting.
I could deal with somebody like even more butch than Ace, for instance, would be, I think, a great companion.
Right.
But then again, I also like companions like Leela or Romana, people who are very tough and self-possessed. And I'm really hoping to see another companion like that. It would really be great.
And because it is TV, it would be too easy for the writers, and I'm talking about writers anywhere, UK, US, anywhere, to go into the stereotype of, oh, it's a lesbian companion, therefore she's going to be butch and ride motorcycles and, all this kind of thing. And they just go right into the stereotypes and leave everything out. That was really why I liked the way Jack Harkness was written.
Right.
Because he had all the subtlety of an enlightened 43rd century guy.
That's the thing. No, I think that's key, though. Never mind the sexuality. He was from the future. It'd be great to see a companion from a different culture, like Leela, or a different planet, like Romana, or a different time, like Astrid before she got killed.
It's as if they sit around and they brainstorm ideas that would look really cool on screen. And somebody says, dinosaur in the Thames. Okay, cool. Or TARDIS hanging from a crane.
Right.
Okay, that would be cool. And they put these all on a bulletin board. Now they have to connect the dots.
Exactly. Well, let me break it to you. That's exactly how a modern action film like Transformers is made. They spitball ideas by putting them up in little segments like that, and then they have to bridge between scenes. And that's how a modern action film is made, and it's really not about writing in the traditional sense.
So Doctor Who is now an action series.
Yeah, kind of. And that can be done. That can be done really well, and it
action
can be done
adventure,
really poorly.
I think, would be good.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
If you're doing an action film and you're doing one every week, and everything has to be epic,
right. It's all about epic.
It becomes tiring, and it starts to fall down.
And yet, we only have to look at the history of action films to see some films that are made on the storyboard have been very good. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Terminator 2, really great films. You know, that's, I think, one of the factors that's made Doctor Who so damn popular. It's fun, and it's action-packed, and, you know, you can get the thrills out of it. Classic Who doesn't offer nearly as much of that, at least not consistently.
Visually, the new series is just far and away superior.
Yeah, Old Who was basically a stage play with cameras pointed at it.
Right.
And New Who is a movie. It's shot like a movie.
Well, and it does have that cinematic feel, especially with... I thought this new episode was scored very, very well.
Yeah, and it's still Murray Gold.
It's still Murray Gold, but he seemed a lot less over the top now.
Maybe he was just on his best behavior because it was a season opener.
Maybe so. I do appreciate the fact that, and this is just me because I'm a musician, and I appreciate the fact that there were longer themes in the music that I heard.
I'll tell you what, though.
Not just that.
Right, from
like, give me more than 7 notes.
Yes,
please.
Thank you. From a musical standpoint, I gotta say, I am so happy that Matt Smith's leitmotif is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really sick of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure nobody else noticed, but it was really bad. Have you picked up on any kind of motif for Peter Capaldi's Doctor?
Not
for
yet.
Doctor 12?
Not yet.
I wonder if we've heard it, and we're not going to realize that we heard it until it revisits in the next episode or two.
We probably have heard it, but like you said, or at least, you know, on my set, it sounded like the music was maybe mixed a little lower than in previous episodes. Part of the problem that I have with American TV, the way it's mixed, like a show like 24, for example, where the dialogue is dramatic and it's very low and people are whispering to each other, and then the music comes on.
Just testing your stereo.
You know, and I'm thinking, God, the car exploding wasn't enough. You know, now we have to get the bass drums and everything coming in at top volume level. Dynamic range is good, but when the dynamic range is so huge that I'm constantly turning up my TV to hear the dialogue and turning it down when the music starts coming in, that's a little too much. And I thought they did a really good job mixing this episode.
Well, here's a question.
I understood all the dialogue, but I heard all the music and I heard all the effects, but it wasn't too much of anything else.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you like the new theme?
I did. The opening credits I already talked about visually, but I thought the most striking thing was when I heard it.
Yeah.
Because the lead instrument has changed.
Yeah. It's a lot more shrill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot more synthish.
Yeah, it's a pretty cutting sound.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I really liked about the theme back in the 60s was it's kind of haunting.
Yeah.
Over the Smith and Tennant eras, it got bigger and bigger. The orchestra got bigger and bigger, and it got more bombastic.
Much more about the orchestra than about the synthesizer, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I thought, okay, it's a great theme, but I also kind of like the sort of mystery, ethereal quality to it.
Yeah.
And I think with that synth in there, we still have the orchestra, we still have the drums, but with that synth in there, and especially the way it has kind of an echo on it.
It really made me think of the Sylvester McCoy theme a lot.
Yeah, it seems a little more mysterious.
Not bad.
And I'm wondering if they did that on purpose because they revamped the music for Sylvester McCoy, who was supposed to be the is he good or is he evil doctor. And we now have another doctor who is he good or is he evil?
Yeah.
Because Peter Capaldi can be sinister, totally evil. Or he can be light and bouncing around and having a great time.
Yeah.
And I thought the music reflected that very well. I'm looking forward to the next episode. Not just the opening credits and the music, but all of it. And
I tell you, Peter Capaldi, I think, brings such a fresh approach. And for an old school fan, a really welcome return to a more imposing doctor, a commanding figure. I'm really looking forward to seeing him take charge of a situation.
Yeah, the word I was thinking was gravitas.
Yeah, he's got the gravitas, that I think if he walks into a room, he's going to really be able to take command if he needs to, in a crisis.
He can walk into a room and take over without people going, "Oh God, it's the doctor."
Exactly.
Right. I kind of got a little bit tired of his reputation preceding him everywhere.
Ooh, boy, they trotted that out, I think, several times too many. They trotted that out on Matt Smith's first episode. He bluffed the alien away.
Right. That was a very good use of that, though.
It was, yeah.
I thought, okay, at least they're using his reputation in a way to sort of give us a surprise defeat.
Right.
You know, he's going to defeat them in a manner that we're not accustomed to.
Right, but I think you can only go to that trough once.
Right, exactly.
You know?
When you bring it back again and again, you know, we start going, okay, is this going to be like the whole Captain Kirk? We're going to talk the computer to death once or twice a season
exactly.
now?
And right, and if it's on the writer just to write a more impressive speech with which he has to scare off whoever the intruder is this week, then that's not going to be a show that anybody's going to want to watch.
Right.
It's probably grist for another discussion, but I think it would be fun to look and see just how many effective diplomacy moments there have been recently. I mean, I can't think of too many.
Well, that's because most of the villains these days are totally evil, and the Doctor has been 99% good.
There was that one kind of recent one with the gangers, where he negotiated a truce between them and the humans.
Right.
At the end of the episode, I thought it was a nice touch that they put that on there.
Yeah, I thought it was. The emotion of it seemed a little forced, but
Right, but just to show that happening at all.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
You've got other episodes, like the one where the Silurians came back. I can't remember the name of it, but the recent reintroduction of the Silurians, he tried to broker a truce then too, and of course, just like every time the Silurians are involved, it didn't work.
Right. It would be very easy to say, well, people are complaining that the Doctor's getting too violent, so we'll just put some, we'll give him a token speech.
I don't know.
It would be too easy to do that and then have it revert back to the whole.
I wonder how much of it is the producers coming out and kind of manipulating the whole overall plot line like that, and how much of it is the imagination of the individual writer, you know? The Third Doctor spent a lot of time negotiating truces. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very admirable thing, but it doesn't make for a very action-packed anything.
True.
So,
yeah, for all his gadgetry and wizardry, occasionally John Pertwee just had to revert to the old "Hey!"
Right.
So
right. Or call in an airstrike.
Right.
You know, it always was pretty effective with Unit backing him up.
And I look forward to Peter Capaldi being a lot more like John Pertwee. You know?
Yeah.
He obviously loves human beings. They're his favorite species, probably outside of his own, maybe in front of his own. But John Pertwee had a marvelous way of talking down to people in the manner of kind of like an uncle kidding his nieces and nephews when they're acting stupid.
Yeah, but on the part of an entire species.
Right, exactly. He talked down to anybody. He talked down to ambassadors, the brigadier, his own companions. But at the same time, he always wanted to save them and make sure that they did the right thing in the end.
Well, with the confusion of his recent regeneration waning, I'm hoping that Peter Capaldi can pull in a little bit of that feel of the Third Doctor and the Fourth Doctor, too, when he would get on his high horse.
Yeah, he could definitely act superior. We saw a little bit of that in Christopher Eccleston's Doctor.
Yes.
Those little things where somebody would say, "What are you talking about?" And he would go, "Tiny little human brains. How do you think in that?" Just a little aside, but
He never really got his due. It's a real shame.
Well, it'd be interesting to see the Doctor as a ruthless pragmatist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, any means necessary is going to be his watchword.
And I think Capaldi, I could definitely see him delivering a line like, Peter Davison had the opportunity when Adric died.
Yeah.
But they didn't write the scene. They could have had a little argument with, well, Doctor, you saved me. You saved him. You saved all these people. And he just has to look him dead in the eye with, really, really serious and say, I can't save everyone.
Right.
And if Peter Capaldi did it, is he being truthful because he's sorry, or is he just kind of being, well, that's just the way I am, so screw it?
It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, too, because that was a very early manifestation of the whole fixed point in time trope. I'm not a big fan of it, but it was definitely in play on Earthshock.
I'm not so sure how I feel about the fixed point in time, but we'll see how it happens.
Yeah, I think it, as a writing crutch, it can be abused very badly, but it is something.
But so can bringing back the Daleks, and it looks like they're going to do a good job with the next episode. Well,
it's on them to come up with material that they've never tried before. Every time they bring the Daleks back, it's got to be something novel, and I liked Asylum of the Daleks And this looks to be a great episode, too.
We will talk about that next week. See you next time.
All right. Adios.